Hey everyone, Conor here again, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that I really enjoy and really love, and something that's had a great evolution over my training career / coaching career, which is maintenance phases. So, a phase where your goal is to mainly maintain. Interesting. Why the hell would I want to do that? I want to be aggressing. I want to be either, let's say you're more of a bodybuilder type. I want to be taking my time to either gain muscle or I want to take it to lose fat. Powerlifter, I want to capitalize on my hypertrophy or actually make hypertrophy / better neurological stimulus, whatever, right? But the idea is why the fuck stay the same? Why does that have a role? Well, I'm going to go into that today and why I've become more and more fond of this, especially as I've run into certain speed bumps and hurdles myself. So, the first thing I want to touch on is stress recovery adaptation curves. And also your general adaptative syndrome or cycle. What that basically looks like is when there's actually a stress, like a stressor or something like that, the adaptation actually won't take place at that very time. Usually it's going to take the stress to go away for the adaptation to reveal itself. When there's in that alarm state, it's not the time to adapt. For example, I was just out in the sun before. I probably was getting a little bit burnt then. I'm not actually getting tan just then. I might get tan later. Me, probably not. Probably the worst example in history. But the idea is same thing at the gym. When you're actually in the gym, that's when you're actually not progressing a lot of things. It's only when the stressor is gone, you can start to recover, that the gains actually start to reveal themselves. This sort of applies, yes, in very minute things, and it can have a lot of implication with training frequency and overload and undulation and stuff like that. But it actually does happen across a bigger picture again. So let's say hard mesocycle, hard mesocycle, hard mesocycle. There's certain systems in there that have longer SRA curves and haven't actually had the chance to completely recover. Some things don't even have the potential to recover in a 1 week deload or whatever. So I think this is where certain things can be handy. And to be honest, you do see a lot of adaptations start to reveal themselves in this phase. Even for your chronic dieters, you start to stress yourself out. You're really pushing all kinds of things, and you see in these phases that things like NEAT go back up, like thyroid output actually goes back up. You can actually eat a bit more food. And sometimes fat loss reveals itself. No, I'm not saying being in caloric surplus or in maintenance is the best way to lose fat, but it can definitely reveal the caloric deficit stimulus you've been chucking before, now that you're not in as much of a stressed out state. For example, I've seen so many times clients, work hard, go on holiday, actually eat a bit more, but the stressor is reduced and they actually start to adapt and come back leaner, more muscular, all that stuff. And it's yes. Right, so another thing I like it for is it gives a chance to upregulate / desensitize certain systems. For example, we know volume is quite important for hypertrophy. There becomes a time, so I've talked about minimum effective dose and maximum recoverable volume, sort of landmarks talked about by Mark Usatel. In time, as fatigue and stress and cycle after cycle of work, even with those deloads, your maximum recoverable volume actually comes sort of down. But as you've been cranking away on the volume stuff like that, each time you jump in, your minimum effective dose is going to creep up, as with the overload principle. And eventually it's going to become smaller and smaller to the point where you're shooting at a really close bullseye. These maintenance phases, what they do, they allow for the dissipation of fatigue, so your volume that you can actually cover can actually go back up, and more importantly, I think, your minimum effective dose can come way lower. And now, think of that, guys. You're just chucking a dart, blindfolded at a whiteboard, and a lot of stuff's going to work. Or more or probably if you're smarter people out there, it means you can potentiate gains for a lot longer than you otherwise could have. You wouldn't be running into issues overtraining syndromes, injuries, such as lack of motivation to train, etc. Right, next thing. So I think this is also a really good time where some people can focus on their health. So I've talked a lot about how health is the part in the equation that actually lines up stimulus and adaptation. If the health is not there, you can chuck a stimulus at whatever and the adaptation won't be there. I've got people's health markers a little bit better in this phase. So Luke Lehman and people at Muscle Nerds are quite big fans of things like heart rate variability, blood pressure, heart rate, just general biomarkers. Same with a few other people. This is generally a time where, with the reduced training, potentially changing the stimulus a little bit, you can actually get those things back up and potentiate future adaptations. Right, I think it's also a time to do certain amounts of prehab work. So one of the cool things about program design is, or particularly phase potentiation, is you're always trying to stay 1 or 2 steps ahead of what you're trying to do. For example, let's say you're right here. You're always looking down there like, okay, this is going to bang up certain areas. Let's make sure certain things are prehabbed and good to go before that. So I'm not going to get injured. So it's not going to get in the way of the overload over there. With the whole thing of, looking ahead, it's the same reason why, can resensitize certain things. So when we're over there, we can get the adaptation we want then. It's also a good time for your bodybuilders and stuff like that to work on your execution style stuff. So I don't know how popular these guys are at the moment, but the whole MI40 crew and stuff like that, that's something they used to, brag on about, which I do understand a lot of the points. So they used to call it primer phase. So there's a time marking, making sure my execution is perfect. And that way, every set I do, I'm going to get more out of a particular muscle I want. Less stimulus is going to go towards muscles I don't want, as well as joints and ligaments, tendons I don't want. So more of it is actually directed to where we want, which funnily enough actually decreases your minimum effective dose as well. Another shift / bigger bullseye just there. It's also, okay, main thing I love about it, probably it's the best time for complete, and I mean complete fatigue reduction. Just even those are little niggly injuries and just pains in weird places, they can seem to go. Yes, I understand the stimulus may not have been solved at least, but sometimes just, being reactive is actually good enough than being proactive. So a lot of those little things can go away and you just feel fresh, you just feel motivated. By the end of a good maintenance phase, to be honest, you're psychologically motivated. You're almost like one of those dogs that's just frothing at the mouth, like I can't wait to get back in the gym. And probably I don't know if I said favourite thing about 7 times, but the truest, most realistic / most practical favourite thing about a maintenance phase is with a lower volume, probably lower intensity, just less hours in the gym, probably less days in the gym, you can focus on the other stuff in life. So I've talked about volume stress before. So maybe this is all the stresses you can handle in your life, and training takes up a chunk. And this is the stuff you can do in work, business, relationships, studying, whatever. Suddenly you think that you can do all this and you can actually progress your business again. You can work on those psychological issues you've been struggling with. You can work in your relationship. You can do all these things that have been missed with the effort in the gym as well as the time in the gym that now you don't have. Now you can shift towards other things. Maybe there's a hobby or goal you've always wanted to do. This could be the time. That's one of the most practical things I love about this. As I've become a coach, I understand that I can't do as much as I used to before I was a coach, because it's both physically stressing as well as psychological stressing. So guys, last thing, how to use them. Jeez, might be a long video. So where I like to use them basically is if the stimulus to adaptation is getting harder, or I have to do unsustainable amount of things to actually get a response. So we talked about that, MED / MRV sort of thing. There's certain times of the year where that's really going to look small. So let's say a bodybuilding show. You do a bodybuilding show, you might actually get an increase in maximum carb volume again for another month or so, because you now got extra food and all that stuff. Maybe not then, straight after a show, because you're already primed in a few ways for that, but maybe the month after, so the second month after a show, if health markers are good. Anytime you just notice your progression in the gym is lacking, if you notice your motivation in the gym is lacking, / maybe it comes out of necessity. Life sometimes prioritizes for us. Suddenly you got a month where you got, I don't know, all those obligations you got to attend, you got a bunch of meetings, you got work trips, you got maybe even a family trip. Could be something more positive, Maybe that comes up, and you can sort of see that zoomed out from, maybe a year, 6 months away. I think it's something you should work into your training / not try and outwork it and cram in sessions at midnight. Eventually that's just not worth it, and it's going to make your training when you come back even worse. So I'd say, find, if life doesn't find it for you, maybe have them once every, does change across training career. I'd say if you're a beginner, maybe once a year. If you're more intermediate to advanced, maybe once every 6 months to once every 3 to 4 months, as your opportunity to push becomes more and more taxing for your body. So I hope you enjoyed the videos, guys. The long video maintenance phases / primer / potentiation phases. And I hope we've got something out of it, / it's an interesting topic. So hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you later.